Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Stephen Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you guys the latest and greatest in soccer news from around the world. Welcome back to your favorite soccer podcast. I have finally been able to get out of the house during this pandemic. Me and my girlfriend, we ended up going to Disney, specifically Epcot, for the Food and Wine Festival. It was my first time going, and I had a really great time. I mean, the drinks, obviously, the food. We barely rode any rides, but that's the best part about Epcot. You don't have to ride rides to have a good time. You know, you're just laid back, having a good time, and of course, get a little tipsy here and there, But overall, it was a great trip, and it was just great to get out of the house and just explore and enjoy the outside world, honestly. Of course, always having our masks on, staying safe, using hand sanitizer like every 10 minutes. But for the most part, I mean, it was an awesome trip, and we had a great time. But enough about me. Let's get right into what we're going to be talking about in today's show. With the first part, we're going to be talking about two Premier League giants and who is going to be better this season, Chelsea or Manchester United. Obviously, you got Liverpool and Man City, but I'm going to be talking about those two who have made probably the biggest improvements over the past two seasons and, are looking to challenge those top two. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the first part of the show. In the second part, I'm going to be recapping the first two matches of League A in the Nations League. Just kind of going quick over where each country stands in their group and how they got there. In the third part, I'm going to be finishing off my top five Europe League, season previews with Ligue 1. I know the season's already started, but just going to give a quick overview of each team and, how I feel they're going to be doing this upcoming season. And of course, in my last segment, my favorite part of the show, I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 attacking midfielders in the world. So let's just get started with the Chelsea versus Manchester United. Who has a bigger chance to challenge the top two? I mean, they both had some very strong seasons, and that's, we're going to talk about that in this segment. We're going to be talking about, how they went, how, their overall season went, some of their best and worst players from last season, some of the transfer window additions. Obviously, for Chelsea, there's a lot to talk about there. And, of course, the current squad and potential starting 11 for the squad. And then at the end, I'm just going to give you guys my prediction for who is going to finish the season better. So let's get right into it with just starting with Chelsea and just talking about their 2019-2020 season. Of course, we know Eden Hazard, a Chelsea legend, left for Real Madrid at the beginning of the season. So there was no more relying on that top world-class talent. They're going to be having to rely on the academy products, a lot of youth, with some established veterans there as well. You had Willian still, you had Azpilicueta. So you still had some really strong players, but then you also had Frank Lampard coming in and, a fresh, rookie manager, obviously his glory days with Chelsea. So, it gave a lot of hope for fans, but at the same time, there was a little bit of skepticism with how is he going to bring this team together. This was obviously a transition year for them, trying to bring in a lot more youth and giving them a lot of experience. Of course, you had Pulisic come in, Captain America. What was he going to do in the Premier League in his debut season? And honestly, things started off kind of scary because they lost 4-0 to Manchester United to start the season. And Man U were going through a bit of a rebuild of their own, which we'll talk about later in this segment. But that was pretty much the worst stretch of their season, like right off the bat, because they proceeded that with one. It was just a tough loss. You start the season off. You obviously have a big match against Man United, and you want to get off to a good start, but it obviously didn't happen. However, they did turn around pretty quickly with just one loss in their next 11 matches, and that's nobody was really expecting that, especially so soon. Obviously, especially with Pulisic, he wasn't really playing that well. Their marquee signing of the season, but you obviously had guys like Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham. They all showed up and produced well in the Premier League, especially in their first full-fledged season. However, after that strong 11-game stretch, they had their worst, part of the season with 5 losses in 7 games. And it kind of looked like things were going to start like that. That was how the season was going to go because no one expected them to have such a strong start. So when they saw that 5 losses in 7 games, it was like, all right, this is probably the kind of the Chelsea team we were going to be looking at this season. But after that, it was still roller coaster season, ups and downs. But then towards the end, they seemed to really pick it up, while other teams around them just couldn't get it together, which is why they were able to finish top 4. Of course, you had Pulisic finally coming into his own and having an amazing, end of the season. Probably was their best player in that stretch. And, was definitely their best player. I mean, he was getting goals here and there, getting, really nice runs with the ball and really just making things happen for himself. But for the most part, I feel like the Blues defied expectations, and Lampard just had a really solid season in the Premier League, his first time around. Now, going into the Carabao Cup, the EFL Cup for the Premier League, they didn't do so well, crashed out in the 4th round to Manchester United. I mean, it's a tough draw in the 4th round. You would hope not to face a team like that until much later. But that's what happened. They faced off against Manchester United and lost 2-1. But the thing, for the most part, that wasn't really in the top of their priorities. But of course, that still hurts when you lose to a top club like Man U. Next, the FA Cup. They made it all the way to the final, facing Arsenal. However, they did lose in penalties. And while they did defy expectations, defeating Liverpool 2-0, Leicester 1-0, and then getting revenge on Manchester United 3-1 in the semifinal, it still hurts to lose to Arsenal, who at the time, going into that match, were considered the lesser team, the weaker side. So that obviously hurts. And then you also have, a rookie manager on the other end in Arteta, who got the trophy. That obviously hurts. So a trophyless season for Chelsea, but there was definitely some encouraging signs during that FA Cup run. Next, we're going to be talking about the Champions League, and they drew in Group B, which was kind of like the semi-group of death, because it had some very solid, B-tier teams, because Chelsea, they're a B-tier team right now, and they were matched up with Valencia, Ajax, and Lille. All teams that would be considered about the same, and so really, no one really knew how that group was going to turn out. Lille obviously crashed out, and they, I don't even think they won a game in the group. So it was pretty much between the top 3 of Valencia, Ajax, and Chelsea. And when Chelsea lost the first match of the Champions League group stage to Valencia 1-0, you knew it was going to be a battle. And they needed to get some points later on to be able to go through. And they just did. They just squeaked by, getting ahead of Ajax in points, and honestly, good for them. For them to start off poorly with that 1-0 loss to Valencia, it definitely shows the fight that they have, especially in such a young group that doesn't have a lot of Champions League experience. And I was definitely impressed with what they showed in that, in that run. But next, after that, of course, they drew Bayern Munich in the last 16, and that obviously didn't go well. I mean, they lost 7-1 on aggregate, but at the time, that obviously looked bad. Losing 7-1 on aggregate is always going to look terrible. But then when you see what they did the rest of the way, dismantling Barcelona and obviously going 3-0 against Lyon, 7-1, I mean, it's not terrible, especially with, like I said, the young talent that they have. And then the second leg, they didn't even have Azpilicueta or Pulisic. So overall, I mean, not the best run, but at the same time, better than what a lot of people expected from them. Now, let's talk about some of their best and worst players in the season. And starting with worst, I mean, there is no other candidate than Kepa Arrizabalaga, whatever. I mean, he was absolutely terrible. He gave up, 58 goals this season. The most by any Chelsea goalkeeper ever. That's terrible. And he didn't even play the full season. He got benched at the end to Willy Caballero, and I mean, for good reason. I mean, he had a sub 60 or 58% save percentage. I mean, just absolutely terrible. And then when you consider the fact that he's the highest paid goalkeeper in the world as well, it's just not looking good. And hopefully, at least hopeful for Chelsea's fans' sakes, he can have a bounce back year and get in Frank Lampard and his side's good graces. But right now, has an uphill climb to, uphill battle. Whatever. Now, for their best players, I definitely have to give it. I had to nominate two guys with Mason Mount and Christian Pulisic, and then Kovacic was just behind because he played great in the start of the season. Then fatigue started to get to him, so he wasn't really at the top. Pulisic, on the other end, I know it was the same way, where his beginning of the season wasn't so good. However, the second half was just world class. I mean, the way he was just able to create for himself, for his team. I mean, he had 11 goals and 7 assists, and he was just he was easily the star of the team, and he shows the potential to be able to be a world class talent. Obviously, as an American, I'm super excited for that. Hopefully, he can continue that into next season, especially with all these huge signings that we're going to be talking about next coming in. But yeah, I mean, Pulisic was just huge. And of course, Mason Mount, another really good young talent that Chelsea have, who with his he played 53 matches, which is the most by any player in Chelsea, and he had 8 goals and 5 assists. I mean, his work rate was second to none. I mean, you could see it by the way he just hustles really hard every single game, and that's definitely something that Chelsea's going to want to keep, especially with him just being 21 years old. He shows the potential, and he was a key to their attack last season. So definitely Mason Mount and Pulisic, the two top players for Chelsea last season. Now, quickly, let's get into some of the transfer window additions. I've talked about it enough, but I mean, it's just ridiculous. They've added Timo Werner for about $60 million, Hakim Ziyech for $44 million, Thiago Silva and Malang Sarr, 2 solid center backs on a free transfer. And then you add Ben Chilwell, and then, of course, the wonder kid Kai Havertz on the squad. I mean, this is going to be a very new team, and so that's why I want to see some of the potential starting 11 for this squad. I still believe Kepa is going to be the goalkeeper. I mean, it would be dumb for Lampard to not. I mean, that's of course if they don't find some other option, in the transfer window. To me, I don't think it's going to happen with such little time. And if that doesn't happen, then I believe Kepa's still going to be between the sticks. Hopefully, he can have a better season. I mean, he showed a lot of promise when he was in La Liga, so hopefully he can turn it around. Of course, at right back, you're going to have Azpilicueta, the captain. I mean, the guy's, a staple in the team, and he was great last season, so he's going to be there once again. The center backs, you have Thiago Silva starting, which is going to be huge, and of course, you got Rudiger, another big-time center back. I mean, he was kind of inconsistent last season, but he's shown a lot of promise. And of course, at left back, you got that new signing, Ben Chilwell, who's going to be great for them next season. In the center defensive midfielders, you're going to have Kovacic and Kante. Hopefully, Kante can stay healthy this season. And if he can, him alongside Havertz in that midfield is going to be deadly. And it's going to have a great combination of control and of course defense and attack. So that's probably going to be their strength next season, even though you have a front line of Ziyech at right wing, Werner at striker, and then of course Pulisic at left wing, which is a very scary front three if they can obviously find the chemistry together, because this is obviously a brand new front three. You got Pulisic, who's obviously was there last season, but Werner and Ziyech, two new guys, big time players, but you never really know how it's going to work out when they're brand new signings. So, of course, we have to wait to see how that happens. And, of course, you got those possible subs of Tammy Abraham, Kurt Zuma, Mason Mount, Marcos Alonso, Malang Sarr that I already talked about, Hudson Odoi, Olivier Giroud, Ross Barkley, Jorginho. I mean, Reece James. You got so many guys that you can, fill in. Like, they have a very deep squad. So, I definitely see a lot of good things happening from Chelsea next season. So, next, let's go into Manchester United, and they entered this season, at least last season, looking at a possible rebuild. Pogba looked like he wanted to head out. There was a lot of noise, a lot of rumors about him wanting to go to Real Madrid. That never happened, and good thing for it. Even though he had kind of an injury-riddled season, he was still very important to their squad. And they had a lot of young players that were going to be relied on. 10 of their 14 most played players were 25 and under. So, you obviously had Rashford, you had Martial, you had Greenwood, who was discovered this season. But as expected, the start of the season was just terrible. In their first 11 games, they lost 4, drew 4, and won 3. I mean, just showing their inexperience. And it's easy to say that fans and analysts alike were wondering if manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was the man for the job. And luckily, they would turn it around. They won 5 of their next 9 games. And then would come the missing piece of their squad, which was, of course, attacking midfielder Bruno Fernandes. I mean, this man was an absolute gem for them and was easily the signing of the entire Premier League season. He was just perfect. They didn't lose a match when he was there. In the next 14 games when he was on the squad, they won 9, drew 5. And that surge, along with obviously some Premier League sides like Leicester City failing towards the end, got them a top 3 spot. Now, 66 points and third place is good for what you were expecting this season. But in the long run, and when you're really looking at it from afar, 66 points, that's the same amount that they got last season, and I believe they got 6th place last year. So it was obviously a combination of the Premier League really just being a 2-team race with like the rest being behind, and at least Manchester United were able to be the top of the rest. So there is some things to take in from that, and obviously with a lot of young talent being like the focal point of the offense, you got to just enjoy the little things. But being third place, you have Champions League football next season. It's an exciting time for Manchester United, especially with them now being linked with top talent, and it's going to be exciting to see what they can do. And in the Carabao Cup, next in the Carabao Cup, Manchester United did start it a little rocky, as they had to go to penalties in the third round versus Rochdale. But then they did defeat Chelsea in the next round, 2-1, which we already talked about. And then they beat Colchester United 3-0 after that. So they were looking very solid. But then they had to face Manchester City in the semifinal. And that didn't go well, as they lost 3-2 on aggregate. I mean, still close, but just not enough to get over the hump. And of course, against Manchester City, a team that has way more quality than they did, they weren't expected to go out, and they weren't expected to, to advance, and they didn't. So, semifinal loss, and the first of many this season, as in the FA Cup, they also made it all the way to the semifinal, but this time they lost to Chelsea 3-1. That was a bad one. That was a bad loss, because at this point, they were already playing extremely well, and were expected to go through to the final of the FA Cup and then take it, because they were going to be taking Arsenal on, and they were the better side. But they lost 3-1. So that was obviously a really, really bad end to that, cup run. And then in the Europa League, another disappointing ending as they made it all the way to the semifinal once again, but then lost to eventual winners Sevilla 2-1. That makes it 3 semifinal losses this season. Just another trophyless campaign. I mean, of course, like, you got to look at the good things, like, you know, the addition of Bruno Fernandes. But in the end, when you come away with this season with no trophies, especially with how you were playing at the end, it hurts. It obviously hurts. And that was pretty much the season for them. Some good things and obviously some bad. But now, with, you know, that being the first season of the rebuild, they're going to be looking for some bigger things next season. So obviously the best player for them this season was Bruno Fernandes. In 22 matches played, he had 12 goals and 8 assists. He was the missing piece. I mean, you slotted him into that midfield, and, you know, the system that Solskjaer put into that team from the beginning was just missing that talisman playmaker in the middle, and that's what he brought to them. I also have to mention Martial and Rashford, who both had, you know, 20-plus goal seasons. They also contributed with 9 assists, so they were very, very strong in their first, like, full season, as being, like, the main focal points of the offense. And they definitely did not disappoint. Of course, Martial didn't have the best start to his season, but the way he was able to end it is very encouraging for Manchester United fans. And of course, worst, I had to give it to 2 different players, in Jesse Lingard and Andreas Pereira. Lingard played 40 matches. He only got 4 goals and 2 assists. And, for so long, it felt like Lingard would be a key figure for this United squad. But, he's just fallen off since then. He went on like a 10-month goalless streak. And, it just does not look good for Lingard. He just has not been able to get it together. And I feel like I'm surprised he wasn't sold this offseason, or at least during this transfer window. I wouldn't be surprised if his next stop is at a way smaller club where he has to try to build up his reputation again. But yeah, Lingard is definitely going to be coming off the bench primarily, and probably not even going to be getting much playing time for the most part. So yeah, very terrible. And Pereira, 40 matches played as well, 2 goals, 4 assists. Another guy that was backed by plenty of Manchester United fans to be like a top player. He just wasn't getting a lot of playing time with the former managers, but Solskjaer has given him opportunities, and he just has not taken advantage of them. He's out of position so many times. He's a poor decision maker, and he's just a poor quality player. He's not the kind of guy you would expect to be in a Manchester United uniform. So yeah, those were definitely your 2 worst players. Now, getting into some of the transfer window additions, really there was only 2 major ones, with Donny van de Beek recently getting signed for $43 million. He will add a lot of great quality into the midfield. He's probably going to be playing more of a center midfielder role instead of a center attacking midfielder role that he's used to, obviously, of course, because of Fernandes. And, of course, you got goalkeeper Dean Henderson, who I feel is going to be very, very key to this team's success next season, even though they already have David De Gea. We're going to be talking about that very soon. We're going to be talking about the starting 11. And to start the season, you're probably going to see David De Gea there. He's a world-class goalkeeper. He's been one of the best in the world for so many years. So I wouldn't be surprised if Solskjaer goes there, unless obviously Dean Henderson just surprises him in training or something like that. I just don't see it happening to start the season. But as soon as De Gea has another one of those, mistake games and just doesn't look good as he has for the last at least 2 seasons, don't be surprised seeing Dean Henderson between the sticks for Manchester United. And if he plays well, I feel like that's it for De Gea, at least in Manchester United. So for now, you got De Gea, goalkeeper. Right back, you got the defensive juggernaut, Wan-Bissaka. Of course, it looks like Harry Maguire's going to be playing for Manchester United. I'm not sure about that yet, but for right now, I got him there at center back along with Lindelof. And then at left back, I got the youngster Brandon Williams, who was discovered last season by Solskjaer. And then, of course, in the midfield, which is probably going to be one of the biggest strengths of this team, you got Donny van de Beek and Paul Pogba at the center midfielding spot, with Bruno Fernandes as the number 10 in the middle. And then that front 3, that very young front three of Mason Greenwood, Anthony Martial, and Marcus Rashford are going to be super, super important for Manchester United next season. I feel like this is going to be the most important part of the squad. And they were playing together for most of last season, at least towards the end. So now they're going to get a full season because obviously Mason Greenwood was, he's only, 17 or 18? So he wasn't given a lot of looks early on in the season, but he's going to be the starting right winger at the beginning of the season. So they're going to get a lot of looks, and I feel like this can be a very, very explosive offense, especially with Fernandes being there for a full season once again. This Manchester United team is one to watch out for. But now, with all that being said, who's going to be better? I honestly believe Chelsea is going to be better. I know with all these new signings, it's hard to really know how good they're going to be. But I truly believe, especially with that signing of Thiago Silva, I think that's going to be the biggest one of all because of just the experience that he brings. Not only what he brings to you on the field, which is, just consistent defense, but what he brings to you in the locker room. I don't feel like Manchester United has anybody like that in their locker room. Nobody. Like, I'm looking up and down this roster, and I don't see anybody that brings that kind of poise and just experience and just professionalism to the locker room. And I feel like that's really going to be what brings Chelsea over the top. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the UEFA Nations League and just recapping their first phase of games.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, everybody. In the last segment, if you missed it, I talked about Chelsea and Manchester United and which team was going to look better this upcoming season. Now we're going to be talking about the UEFA Nations League. And with the first two matches officially done for all the countries, I just want to take a look back at the group tables and see where each team is at after the first phase. So let's just get started with the Group 1. And of course, I just want to make sure you guys know I'm only going to be talking about League A. I mean, don't have a lot of time here on this segment, so I just want to get through League A and talk about each group. So, Group 1, we have Italy, Netherlands, Poland, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. In this group, Italy comes out on top. They have 4 points, with Netherlands and Poland just behind them with 3 points each. For the match day 1, we had Italy versus Bosnia and Herzegovina, ending in a draw. Italy had far more shots and possession, but they just couldn't capitalize on them. Edin Dzeko scored the opening goal with Stefano Sensi scoring the equalizer. Bosnia were able to get that essential goal, especially with them having a much weaker side, and it was nice to see them come out with some fire, get the opening goal. Unfortunately, they just couldn't hold on to it, and it ended in a draw. This was the only point Bosnia were able to hold on to, which sucks because they did have to take on Poland without Lewandowski. So, they should have taken a point there, but of course they lost that one. We're going to be talking about that later. The other match in match day 1, Netherlands took on Poland, and they defeated them 1-0. Netherlands completely dominated Poland in this matchup. They had 64% possession and 14 shots to Poland's 2. Poland clearly missed their top, player probably in their history in Lewandowski. And you just would have liked to see more from Netherlands with just 4 shots on target. Steven Bergwijn did score that only goal, but this wasn't a very, convincing match for either of the top sides in this group. Hopefully we'd see more in match day 1, which we kind of didn't, but Italy did take on Netherlands. Both the top teams in this group did face off against each other. And this would be a big match to say who was going to come out on top in the group. And Italy answered the call. They scored 1 goal to Netherlands 0. And it looked very similar for Italy to that game against Bosnia, as they had way more possession and shots. They were able to find that breakthrough just before halftime with a Nicola Barella header. But Netherlands just looked very sloppy. Especially in the final third. They only had 3 shots on target and had a 78% pass accuracy. I mean, like I said coming into this match, without Ronald Koeman, they were going to be a little unorganized with, a brand new manager, and you can tell. They only scoring 1 goal in the first 2 matches, and, they're lucky to have come away with at least 1 victory. So they at least have 3 points. They're not very far behind from Italy, but losing that game to Italy does give them, that does give them a lot of, confidence heading into the second phase of this tournament. The other match was Poland versus Bosnia. It was a bit sloppy from both teams, but Poland looked more organized. Bosnia did get awarded a penalty early in the game, and they made the most of it with a Radinovic scoring the goal. But that was as far as they would go in terms of positivity in this game. Poland would then equalize just before halftime, and with a solid header from the defender Kamil Glik, and would then score the winner with another header, this time from Grosicki. My bad, the names are a little weird. Sometimes I get them wrong. But yeah, so Poland were at least able to. It was encouraging for Poland to find some offense without their star striker in the lineup. And, it's definitely at least to be able to stay in Ligue. Because I feel like Bosnia are obviously the weaker side out of all these teams here. And this just proves it. A Poland team without Lewandowski being able to score 2 goals on Bosnia. This was the game for Bosnia to win. If they could have won this one, they had a chance to be able to stay in Ligue A, but I just don't see it possible, especially with this slow start, having just 1 point in the first 2 matches. They could have been with 0 points if Italy showed up in the first game. But, they at least have 1 point. It's still possible, but I just don't see it, especially with Poland most likely having Lewandowski for the remainder of this competition. So for right now, Italy on top by just 1 point ahead of Netherlands and Poland. Now in League, in Group 2, we've got Belgium, England, Denmark, and Iceland. And this was kind of like a runaway from the first 2 teams, between the first 2 teams. Belgium looking like, the top country in the world, winning both games, having 6 points, and scoring 7 goals and allowing just 1 in their 2 matches. England have looked very sloppy to start. They do have 4 points, but honestly, I feel like they're extremely lucky to have those 4 points, winning 1 and obviously drawing the other. They've only scored 1 goal. Their defense has held up, allowing 0 goals, but you need to see more from England. They need to be, especially with the dynamic attack that they have with like Raheem Sterling, they have Rashford up top. They have a lot of scores. So for them to only come away with 1 goal in the first 2 matches is just a disappointment. So let's just go into these matches. Match day 1, Belgium took on Denmark, won 2-0. This game was much more even than the score shows. About equal possession, about the same amount of shots. However, Denmark just couldn't get any on target. They only had 1 shot on target of their shots. And Belgium would just go on to the score sheet early with a 9th-minute goal from Jason Denayer, the defender, and Dries Mertens would then double the score later in the game. Belgium did what they had to do to take care of business. Denmark did well, but just couldn't get their foot on the ball well. Just couldn't get any goals. It sucks. They actually ended up with no goals through 2 matches. So their offense definitely needs a lot of work. Obviously, a lot of the responsibility is on Christian Eriksen, and he can't do it all. So this has been a problem for them for a while, and it seems like it's going to be again for this entire competition. In the other match, we had England taking on Iceland. England won 1-0. They completely dominated Iceland. I mean, Iceland, they like to play back. They like to play defensive, make sure, the other team makes mistakes, and it showed because Iceland only had 22% possession, 2 shots, none on target, and but this game got pretty sloppy at the end. I mean, this was a very sloppy ending. Kyle Walker picking up a second yellow late in the game, and then England were rewarded a penalty in extra time after a handball, and they scored, of course, with getting that 1 goal literally at the end. However, England would then concede a penalty literally seconds later, and luckily for them, Iceland did not convert on that penalty. It sailed over the bar. Terrible shot again. They just did not bring their shooting boots to this game. I mean, but that's just Iceland. They like to play back. They usually go look for draws. And against a team like England, they would have been lucky to come away with the draw. However, England were the ones that were lucky in this game to come away with this win, because I don't think they deserved it. Even though they dominated Iceland for, in possession, they didn't take advantage of any of their chances. And luckily, they were able to get the penalty at the end, but 2 red cards in this match, 1 for each team. It was just a sloppy ending, and you usually don't like to see it end that way. Now, in match day 2, you had a dud of a game between Denmark and England, ending in a goalless draw. Easily the worst result in soccer. I mean, you can't tell me otherwise. But Denmark did put a lot of pressure on England. Both teams just came away with 2 shots on target, though. Just another showing that England, at least early on, have not looked right in the attack, and just cannot seem to find any solid connections in the final third. I don't have a lot of, at least for them to win this group, there's no way. Because once they face a big team like Belgium, I mean, their defense is solid. They haven't allowed a goal, but for their offense, the defense just can't be expected to have clean sheets every game, and especially against top tier countries, it's just not going to happen. So, that was just a terrible game. At least it was it was very hard for me to watch it, but yeah, that's just how it went. In the next game, Belgium took on Iceland, winning 5-1. And this game started extremely well for Iceland. Like I said, they like playing back, they like playing defensive and waiting for the team to make mistakes. And at least early on, Belgium did, possibly playing down to their competition. And, they just couldn't get through Iceland, at least early on, first 10, 15 minutes. However, Iceland did end up getting on the score sheet. And early, they scored the first goal. And it was off a terrible deflection. I mean, it wasn't anybody's fault. I mean, it was one of those goals that only happen once every 100 shots. I mean, it wouldn't happen again for Iceland at all again. But it was encouraging for Iceland, for them to at least look like a team that can make it out of this, stay in Ligue A, because they're very, how much should I say? They're very weak, obviously, but they're very organized, and they play very hard, and you can tell that in this game. However, Belgium just has way more quality. And they showed it. They scoring literally 3 minutes later after that goal from Iceland, from an Axel Witsel goal, right by the goal line. And then Batshuayi would go and score a brace, and then Mertens and Doku would contribute with the other goals, making it 5-1. It was a no contest. I mean, it was a nice story in the beginning of the game with Iceland getting that goal, taking the lead. But for the most part, we knew Iceland didn't have a chance in this game, and Belgium showed out. So in the end, Belgium, no surprise, tops of this group with 6 points. England, they got 4 points. They're way ahead of, the other two, with Denmark just having 1 and Iceland having 0, losing both games. But they are not impressive at all. I don't give them any, I have no confidence in them winning this group, even though they're just 2 points behind Belgium. Obviously, that game between Belgium and England in the next phase is going to be a big one. So if they can come out on top there, maybe, but I just don't see it happening. So next we got Group 3 with I think this is one of the most exciting groups in the entire competition, but the beginning of it was just dominated by Portugal and France. Sweden and Croatia just didn't stand a chance against these two teams. And in match day 1, Portugal defeated Croatia 4-1. Portugal were playing without Ronaldo in this game, but when you look at the stats, you couldn't really tell. Croatia were just completely outclassed, and were getting pressured the entire game. I mean, the score could have been worse had Portugal not hit the post so many times. I mean, there was actually once that it hit the post and then it hit the goalkeeper, and then it still didn't go in. Like, that's one of those situations where it looks like it might have been it could have possibly been an own goal, but luckily for Croatia, it didn't. It went out, it went wide. But just before the half, João Cancelo did open up the scoring, and then after that, it just was kind of like open field. I mean, Croatia did get a consolation goal at the end in extra time, but then Portugal would just go right back and score right after. So Portugal just had an answer for anything Croatia had, even though they are a very, quality side. They're missing Rakitic, they're missing Modric, and that presence in the midfield obviously does so much for them. So they didn't have a chance in this game, and it showed with that 4-1 final score. On the other side, you had France against Sweden. This one ended 1-0. This wasn't a very convincing start to international play for the World Cup winners. Sweden did play very disciplined on defense and created a few chances in attack. It was pretty back and forth. I mean, this was a very, very close game. It could have gone either way. However, the individual quality that France has obviously is way better than what Sweden can offer. And Kylian Mbappe came away with a really solid goal. I mean, he was a little lucky with that deflection that ended up right in front of him, but the finish, I mean, it was nasty. It was nasty. For him to just go, it looked like, I thought he was going to go across the outside, but he just went towards the inside, just past the goalkeeper, and, that's why he's one of the best in the world. And that's with France going through 1-0. Next, in match day 2, we had a rematch of the World Cup final with France taking on Croatia. And funny enough, it ended with the exact same result, with France winning 4-2. Croatia were giving France problems early with their physicality, and it resulted in an opening set-piece goal from Lovren. They went up 1-0. And again, this was raising some questions about France, like, is it a little hangover from the World Cup win? They shut that down real quick, as France would score 2 goals just before halftime with some solid team play, and would go into the half up 2-1. Croatia would then equalize 10 minutes later, but then after that, you got France with 2 unanswered goals to win the game, and it just never felt like they were going to lose it, but they didn't have control of this game either. Croatia were playing them very well, and if they had Modric and Rakitic in this game, they could have easily come away with at least a draw or a win. Because, again, what they offer for Croatia in that midfield is you just can't replace that. So, a good win for France, but at the same time, still some question marks, even though they got 2 wins, 6 points. I feel like Portugal, the way they were looking in these games, was just much better than what France had to offer. And in the next game, Portugal did take on Sweden and won 2-0. Ronaldo played in this match, and he made his presence felt with both goals scored. Sweden just never threatened Portugal in this game. They had just 1 shot on target, 32% possession, and just didn't look right. Portugal is a very, very strong side, and they showed it once again in this one. And they are on top of this list, or at least on top of this group. Honestly, in my opinion, even though Belgium, they're the second most, impressive team so far in this UEFA Nations League. Because Belgium have obviously showed up big time. Portugal are right behind them. They've got 6 goals scored, just 1 allowed, with 6 points. And even though this is going to be a very, tightly contested group, I am very excited to see that game between Portugal and France. That's going to be probably the most exciting game of this entire, group stage phase. And it'll be exciting to see who comes out on top of that one, because it'll be a big tell of who's going to ultimately go on to the final stage of this competition. Now in Group 4, we have Spain, Germany, Ukraine, and Switzerland. And this was a very surprising finish, as Ukraine are actually second in this group. With one win, they have a loss, but they got 3 points, while Germany drew both of their games. Disappointing big time, and just continuing the question marks of whether they have what it takes to really win in the international level with this new, generation. Match day 1, you had Spain versus Germany, and ended at a 1-1 draw. And this game was back and forth for most of it, but it did look pretty sloppy, which was expected with so much time in between. How long it's been since these two countries played? It's been months, like almost a year since these guys played international matches. So it was expected to come out sloppy, especially with a lot of new names on the roster. In the end, though, this came down to Germany just not being able to hold on to a lead. They scored in like the 50th minute by Timo Werner and had the lead for most of the game. Literally into the 90th minute, they had the lead. They just played so defensive. Joachim Low, substituted so many attacking players for defenders. At the end of the game, they had 5 center backs and 2 fullbacks on the field to try to hold on to this lead. And you just can't play that way. That's going to give Spain way too much space and way too many opportunities. And they're too good of a side not to eventually capitalize. And that's exactly what happened. They had an extra time equalizer. Literally the last kick of the game was an equalizer for Spain. And that hurts Germany. They should have come away with 3 points here. But again, it's the same thing that's been happening with them for so long. They can't finish games. And honestly, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with the manager. The way Joachim Low, sets this team up, especially when they're in the lead, is just not right. It's not what Germany football is all about. And they need to shore that up. Lowe has been there forever, so obviously, he's probably not going to be on the way out. He's a legend there, but they need to figure this out, because 2 draws. We haven't gotten to the next one. They drew to Switzerland. But like 2 draws in these first 2 matches. They scored 2, allowed 2. It's underwhelming for a country as big as Germany. In the next game, I was actually really excited for this one. You had Ukraine versus Switzerland. These 2 teams, a lot of people would put Switzerland over Ukraine, but the way Ukraine has been playing lately, I just had a lot of stock in them. I felt like they were going to come out big, and they did, winning 2-1 against Switzerland to start this UEFA Nations League campaign. Switzerland just never seemed comfortable in this game. They could barely get anything going in the Ukraine's half. Their lone shot on target was a rocket from Severovic that honestly probably shouldn't have gone in, but it was still a good goal. It was a really, really good goal. But then again, they needed that kind of goal just to get one. And that's not good. They're obviously missing Shaqiri, who gives a lot of that flair, a lot of that creative, ability in the front 3. But against a team like Ukraine, you can't show up like that. Even though Ukraine's really good, you can say that these 2 teams are very evenly matched, and Ukraine just looked much better. Both goals from Ukraine in this game just showed the nasty skill that they have, and their young star. Left back Sichenko looked super good, really, really good. I would probably say he's man of the match. That one touch he had, that one touch goal he had from just inside the box was beautiful, and they definitely deserve this win. And it launched them into being second in this group and gives them a big chance to stay in Ligue. In match day 2, they took on Spain, but they lost 4-0. Ukraine, And in this game, they just dominated Ukraine. They obviously have way more quality, and they finally showed Spain, what they're trying to do. Bringing in all these young players, and they showed up. Specifically, Ferran Torres and Ansu Fati. Those guys just played extremely well. This was, however, an underwhelming performance from Ukraine. Because after showing up with a 2-1 win over Switzerland, to lose 4-0 to Ukraine, to Spain, it sucks. But it's you can't really help it. They couldn't handle the pressure, and Spain just has way more quality. So this was not a surprising finish, but for Ukraine, they obviously expected a lot more from themselves. And then, of course, the last game you had Germany versus Switzerland, a 1-1 draw. Another underwhelming game from Germany, who were outshot by Switzerland 20-14. But Germany had their chances. They just couldn't capitalize on them. Switzerland were finding way too much open space against Germany, and especially late in the game. So this could have easily ended in a 2-1 win for Switzerland, but Germany luckily got away with the win and stay third and in range of Spain. So that's going to finish it up for the UEFA Nations League. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be giving you guys my preview for the Ligue 1 season.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everybody. And if you missed it, in the last segment, I talked about the UEFA Nations League, and specifically Ligue A, and where those countries are at after the first phase of the competition. Next, we're going to be talking about Ligue 1 and their upcoming season. It officially has already started, but I just want to talk about this. Is just finishing up my top 5 leagues in the world season previews, and obviously I got to finish it with Ligue 1. Come on. PSG, if you guys should already know, are my favorite team. So I'm very excited to talk about this team. There's a lot of, even though the title race is a one-team race as it's been for the last, 8-9 years, even though Monaco did win in 2017, there's a lot of interesting races going on throughout the table. So let's get right into it, with the title race being between PSG, and PSG. This is by far the club with the most money and quality in French football, so it's no surprise that they're the only team in the title race. Obviously, their key player is Neymar, and their top transfer signing was permanently getting Mauro Icardi. The ultimate goal for this team is to win the Champions League, plain and simple, and that is going to be where their main focus is. But they'll still be able to sleepwalk through Liga and win the title for the 8th time in 9 seasons. They permanently, like I said, signed Icardi, and he's expected to be the number 9 for this club. If he can become that pure workhorse goal scorer for them to go alongside the magic of Di Maria, Neymar, and Mbappe, they could go all the way. And I'm obviously not talking about Liga, because that's a given. I'm talking about the Champions League. They could do it if Icardi, because by the end of last season, Icardi was a no-show. They didn't even use him. They were using Mbappe as a striker, and I just don't like Mbappe in that area. I feel like he's better as a winger. He's better with space out in the open. I mean, he's got speed, and obviously that helps you when you're a striker, but he doesn't have the strength to really muscle off defenders, and I just never really see him in the right positions when he's in that number 9 spot. So I would love him as, what he is, a number 7, a winger, a Ronaldo type player that's going to make it happen on the wings. And then you got Mbappe in the middle, in the midfield, and he's going to obviously make things happen for you. But that's just how it's got to be for PSG this season. Now, just quickly, let's go to the European competition race. I feel it's going to be between Lille, Nice, Rennes, Montpellier, Marseille, and Lyon. Now, getting into Lille, their key player of the season is going to be Jonathan Ikong. And for a second straight season, Lille have lost key players from another top four after another top four finish. This time, it's Victor Osimhen joining Napoli and center back Gabriel joining Arsenal. They have made some solid replacements up top with Jonathan David and Burak Yilmaz coming in. They're going to really provide a lot of goal scoring for Lille. And holding on to Jonathan Ikong and Jonathan Bamba you got a lot of Jonathans on this team, but that was huge for this club. And a healthy Timothy Way should keep Lille among the best in Ligue 1. No doubt in my mind. Next, you got Nice. Their key player this upcoming season is going to be Kasper Dolberg, and their top transfer signing was Morgan Schneiderlin. Under World Cup winner Patrick Vieira, Nice have just improved every season. They finished 7th in his first season 2 years ago, and then 5th last season. And I have no doubt in my mind that they could possibly finish even better, possibly getting a Champions League spot. They are going to have your Europa League soccer, so that that could obviously mess with their schedule. And it hurts to lose Malang Sarr for free, but bringing in that defensive midfielder Schneiderlin is a big addition and will help on that worst defense from Ligue 1 last season. And another season from Dolberg in Ligue 1 should prove massive, and adding Ronnie Lopez on loan will help in the attack as well. So I see Nice definitely improving off their 5th place finish. Next, we got Rennes. Their key players there is the amazing wonder kid Eduardo Camavinga, and their top transfer, I'm going to give 2 with Sergio Guirassy and Martin Terrier. Rennes had one of the best defensive lines last season as they allowed just 24 goals in 28 matches. That was tied for second with PSG. And they're possibly losing Edouard Mendy to Chelsea, which would hurt big time as they'll have to rely on 36-year-old Romain Salin. And that's obviously where they're going to have the biggest subtraction. They do have Camavinga, literally the most exciting teenager possibly in the world. Maybe at his age, because he's only 17 years old, or turning 18 very soon. And at his age, he's easily the best in his age group. And he's going to be manning the midfield. But they'll just need more from their front line if they are to surprise with another European finish. Guirassy and Terrier will assist Mbaye Niang and Adrien Huneau in that department. So we got to wait to see how those new additions really help out. And then, of course, if the goalkeeper, they do have a veteran there, if he can really help out, that's yet to be seen, but we'll see. Next, we got Montpellier. Their key player is Gaëtan Laborde, and their top transfer is Steffi Mavididi. Montpellier were one of the teams mixed in that 5th to 9th place team that were separated by just 1 point. And they were actually very lucky that the season got canceled because their form ending towards the end of that season was very poor. They were able to find a replacement for number 1 goalkeeper Rouli with the signing of Jonas Omlin from Basel. That's going to help big time. However, it is the signing of 22-year-old Mavididi that will steal the spotlight, as his contributions for Dijon last season on loan was huge. He had 5 goals and an assist, and it helped them avoid relegation. So keep an eye out on Montpellier this upcoming season. Now we got 2 of the bigger clubs in this race, and we got Marseille. Their key player is Dimitri Payet, and their top transfer was Alvaro Gonzalez. After hanging outside the top 3 for years, Marseille finally put together a strong season to finish second in the table. And they do look to repeat that success this season. And there's no reason to think that they can't do it. They obviously still have Payet to go along with Dario Benedetto, Florian Thauvin to help in the attack. They are strengthening that defense with the signing of Gonzalez and, of course, Pape Gueye. Plus, they are most likely holding on to midfielder Morgan Sanson, who has been looked to being possibly on the way out this transfer window. So if they're able to hold on to Sanson, definitely, I expect, even with Champions League football, I expect Marseille to be near the top of the table this season. And last, we got Monaco. I know I said Lyon as the European competition race when I was first saying it, but I replaced them with Monaco because I believe Monaco have a big chance to finish top 3 this year. Their key players was Sam Ben Yedder, and their top transfer was Axel Disasi. That's huge for them. But three things are certain: death, taxes, and a manager sacking at Monaco. And that's just happened again. This season, Niko Kovac gets the luxury of that hot seat. However, I do believe that he will be the one to end that terrible trend. Monaco have made some very solid signings with Kevin Volland, Disasi, and Caio Henrique. The latter two will help immensely on the defensive end, which is what they desperately need if they are to improve on that ninth place finish last season. And like I said earlier, that 5th to 9th place was just separated by a point. So anything could have happened at the end. But they need to give Wissam Ben Yedder help and to just be able to score in more ways than just giving it into him. So, I expect Monaco to definitely improve this upcoming season. Next, now in the mid-table race, we have Lyon, Bordeaux, Stade de Reims, Strasbourg, Angers, Lens, and Saint-Étienne. Now, starting off with Lyon, 3 key players for this side are up for sale in Moussa Dembele, Houssem Aouar, and Memphis Depay. The closest to a transfer looks like Depay to Barcelona, but Lyon have yet to receive an offer that they like for any one of these guys. And with the window getting so close to an end, I don't see them being able to get any replacements for them. I did see that Houssem Aouar looks like he could be going to Arsenal, but there's no traction on these transfers yet. And with the season already underway, I mean, they could be there, they could not. It's hard to really know. That leaves Maxence Cacaret as the future of this club. The young prospect, he showed a lot of promise last season. He was a staple for them during their Champions League run, and he's going to be huge for them this upcoming season. But honestly, it's just hard to know how this club's going to look without those 3 top guys there. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. And if they're able to hold on to them, that they could squeeze into that European title race. But they had them last season, even though Depay was injured for a lot of it. They had most of those guys last season and finished 7th. It was poor. So without those guys, I see them rebuilding, getting a lot of young guys in there, and I feel like that'll be better for them, at least in the long run. Next, we have Bordeaux. Their key player next season is going to be Laurent Koscielny. Probably said it wrong the first time. Bordeaux are entering the season with relatively the same squad from last season that finished 12th. The biggest difference is that young star Yacine Adli should get even more playing time this season and shine. They do have an experienced backline of Koscielny, Pablo, and Maxer, which should help them stay close in most of the games throughout the season. And but they'll be relying heavily on the goal scoring of Wei Zhong Huang and Jimmy Brand once again. And while Josh Maha and Samuel Kalou get more experience, they'll need, Huang and Brand will need to, hold the fort, at least in the goal scoring department. Next, we got Stade Reims. Reims surprised many people last season, finishing 6th and having European competition for the first time in nearly 60 years. They are losing 2 key components to that team in Hassan Kamara and Axel Disasi. So that really hurts, especially on the defensive end. Reims had the best defense in the league last season. And captain Abdel Hamid, along with goalkeeper Predrag Rashkovic, will need to continue their strong play if Reims are going to surprise people once again. They'll just need better contributions in the attack to stay in the top half of the league, especially with Europa League matches coming their way. Like it is for most teams, especially teams that don't have a lot of quality in their side. When you add all those extra matches, it makes it very difficult to succeed in your domestic league. Especially with it being the first time they play there in 60 years, they're obviously going to want to try their hardest there. So it's going to be it's very hard to see Reims having any better of a season than they did last year. Next, we have Strasbourg. Their key player is Mohamed Simakang. And last season, Strasbourg had a really good defense, allowing 32 goals in just 27 matches. But their attack wasn't any better, scoring just 32 goals scored. Scoring just 32 goals. A big reason for their success was the play of young defender Simakang. He had 1.5 tackles, 1.5 interceptions, pretty much 3 clearances per game. And he's going to be huge for their success next season, this upcoming season once again. Adrian Thompson and Ludovic Ajorque will be tasked to provide the goal scoring and playmaking again. Each scored 8 goals last season, and they'll need to give even more next season because they didn't really make any big-time signings to improve that attack. Next, we have Angers. Angers were one of the worst offensive teams last season, with Rashid Aliou leading the team with just 6 goals. They do have one of the more exciting young talents in the league in fullback Ryan Ait Nori, and his growth will just play a big part in their success this upcoming season. They'll need to rely on him for a lot of that playmaking. And, of course, adding experienced goalkeeper Paul Bernardoni was very smart. He's been in Ligue for a while, so, adding that just, does really help on the defensive end. Next, we have Lens. And after finishing second in Ligue 2 last season and earning a promotion to Ligue 1, Lens has reinforced their squad with some great signings, bringing in Seko Fofana, Ignatius Ganago, and Facundo Medina. All are going to be intricate parts of this team next season. And, I feel like bringing all those guys in, even though, of course, the same thing with like Chelsea earlier in the show, when you bring in a lot of new guys, you have to see how they'll fit. But I just think, at least to be able to stay mid-table, stay in the league for sure, I see a lot of I'm putting a lot of stock into Lens this season. Next, we have Saint Etienne. Saint Etienne was the most disappointing team last season. They were expected to compete for a European spot, but they just avoided relegation. Nothing just went right for them. Their defense and offense was among the worst in the league. They did add PSG Academy product Adil Aouchiche, and he's certainly going to help Dennis Bawanga in the attack. He was pretty much the only solid attacker last season for Saint Etienne, and Aouchiche is going to be just inserted into that attacking midfielding spot and should give them a lot of creativity. Center back Wesley Fofana is another young talent on this squad that will be very important to their success. So keep an eye on Saint Etienne, relying on a lot of youth, but they could surprise people. But I'm not putting any stock in that. Next, we have Nantes. Nantes was another Ligue 1 side with inconsistent offense, but they had a very solid defense to keep them away from relegation. I don't see that changing much this season. Alban Lafont will continue to be essential between the sticks, as he has for so long now. The signing of Moses Simon to a permanent deal was essential to them staying away from that relegation battle. He had 5 goals and 5 assists for Nantes last season. So we'll see what they can do. I just expect them to, hover mid-table, bottom half of the table, but stay just good enough to stay away from the relegation battle. And now we got the relegation race between Brest, Metz, Nimes, and Lorient. Now, starting with Brest, they had a solid season in Ligue 1 after being promoted last season. They had 34 goals scored, 37 goals allowed. They have brought in a few players to help stay in the top flight, like center forward Mooney, Steve Mooney, but the loss of midfielder Johan Court, who was their best playmaker last season, will just be too much in my opinion, and was going to keep them in that relegation battle for most of the season. They could surprise people. I just don't see it happening. Next, we have Metz. Habib Diallo was pretty much the sole reason Metz wasn't relegated last season, and he scored nearly half of their goals. He had 12 of their 27, I believe, and he was just 1 assist shy of leading the team in that department as well. Their defense is nothing to preach about, but goalkeeper Alexander Okija will need to have another strong season between the sticks if Metz want to avoid relegation. I don't think they will. I see this being one of the teams that gets relegated this season, especially with them once again having to rely heavily on Diallo. I just think that's too much to put on one player, and not giving them any help. They're probably not going to stay in Liga after this season. Next, we have Nimes. The addition of Andres Cubas is going to be huge for Nimes' defense. That was very, very poor last season. However, this season must provide more offensive production for Nimes. They scored they had just 29 goals last season. And this is where Zinedine Verhat and youngster Kevin Denke come in. They're going to be relied on heavily on that side of the ball. And if they can turn it around, get some strong showings, and just get better overall, maybe they can do it. I see, but obviously they're going to be in the relegation race for most of the season. This is a very weak side. But maybe they have enough. Maybe they have enough. But again, you see how I'm talking. I don't have a lot of confidence in this side. But now that leaves us with Lorient, the champions of Ligue 1 last season. They looked very strong on both ends But obviously, of course, it's against a lot worse competition. And they are adding one of the top scorers from Ligue 1 last season as well in Adrian Gerbic. However, like I've been saying, the transition to Ligue 1 could be a tough one. And while I see them in a season-long relegation battle, they do have the best chance of these four teams to avoid the relegation playoff. I see them probably being the top team of these four and just avoiding relegation. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not the number one expert on all this, but we'll see, man. Lorient. Again, another newly promoted side that'll probably be staying in Ligue 1. So that's going to wrap it up for my Ligue 1 preview. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys stick around because in the next segment, I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 attacking midfielders in the world.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everybody. If you missed it in the last segment, I talked about Ligue 1, the upcoming season of Ligue 1, and just, obviously, of course, talked about every team and, what the expectations are for them. And now we're going to be talking about my top 10 attacking midfielders in the world. This is a very exciting list. We obviously got a lot of playmakers, a lot of goal scorers on this list. The attacking midfielding position is honestly my favorite position. The one I usually pick the most when I'm playing FIFA. When I'm creating my player, I'm always picking attacking midfielder because I like to be a part of everything that goes on in the attack. And that's exactly what attacking midfielders do. They're the number 10s. They have the ball usually for most of the game, especially when they're in attack. And they're the best players on the team. Most usually. So let's just get right into it with number 10 being Jack Grealish of Aston Villa. I was thinking about about two other guys in this pot. I was thinking maybe Donny van de Beek, and I was also considering Marcel Sabitzer from RB Leipzig. But in the end, the importance that Jack Grealish had for his Aston Villa side, if it wasn't for him, they would have been relegated. No doubt in my mind. He had 8 goals and 6 assists for them. Completed 85% of his 38 passes. He had 2.5 key passes per game, 2 dribbles, 2 successful dribbles, and he was no slouch on defense, just under a tackle per game. Grealish just did everything for this Aston Villa side. I don't know how they were able to hold on to him. They obviously value him very, very high. And that's why a lot of teams haven't, put in a bid for him, because Aston Villa is probably asking for close to 50, 60 million euros, and That's obviously a lot for a guy who, has only proven himself really just one season in the Premier League and mostly in the Championship. But I see Jack Grealish as a top 10 attacking midfielder in the world. Just like the way he's able to create for himself, he creates for others, very well, very good as well. And I expect another solid season from him. Of course, Aston Villa has brought in a lot of new guys. At least a lot. They're bringing in talent to try to stay in the Premier League for another season, and try to build something there. And Grealish is the main focal point of all that. The fact that they've been able to hold on to him gives me a lot of, confidence that Aston Villa will be in the Premier League next season. So that is exactly why Jack Grealish comes in at number 10. Next up at number 9, we have a man who had kind of a rocky season. Not very convincing one, but he still's got so much talent. I just could not leave him off this list. It is Philippe Coutinho of, Barcelona, but also Bayern. Last season, he was on loan at Bayern, and he did really well. He had 11 goals and 9 assists, but would mainly play off the bench. I mean, they were obviously at first was hoping they can play a substantial role for them, but he was a bit inconsistent. I mean, with all the things going on, him making that big-time move to Barcelona, it was obviously a dream move for him from leaving Liverpool, and it just didn't work out for him. But now he is in Barcelona and is seemingly in the plans of new manager Ronald Koeman. And I'm really excited to see what Philippe Coutinho can do there with Griezmann. I know you got Lionel Messi there for one more season. But I just think what Barcelona did to Coutinho last season was dirty. But good for him. Winning the Champions League with Bayern and not playing a huge role, but he was still off the bench. Still mainly off the bench, but still playing solidly. He had 1.3 key passes per game, 1.4 dribbles. So he's obviously a really great creator. One of the flashiest players that we have in today's game, and easily has the best right foot in this entire list. You get Philippe Coutinho cutting from the left wing, you make sure you get in front of that man, because his patented cross the field, those wonder goals. I don't know how to call them, but those curved balls that he puts into the top right corner of the goals nearly every time is a staple, and one of the things that wows me every time I see him. So Philippe Coutinho, no doubt in my mind, is a top 10 attacking midfielder in the world, and I feel he's going to be proving that this upcoming season with Barcelona. Now, number 8, the next two, we have some pretty young players, but they have proven themselves to be, extremely top talent. And at number 8, we have Martin Odegaard, recently of Real Sociedad, but now he is back with his parent club of Real Madrid. And last season, he was just so strong for Real Sociedad. He had 4 goals, 6 assists, completed 85% of his nearly 50 passes per game, to go with 2 key passes and 2 dribbles per game. This kid was doing it all, and was a huge part to why Real Sociedad had such a strong season. And, I'm really excited to see what he can do for Real Madrid. A big-time side, obviously, but he's already proven that he can make it happen in La Liga, and Real Madrid just strengthening their side once again. Obviously there was a lot of talk for years that he might have been a bust, not living up to the hype, but for the last 2 seasons, he's proven that he can hang with the big boys, and that is exactly why he comes in at number 8. He is one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. However, he is not better than the next young wonder kid that is coming up on the list. Number 7, we have Kai Havertz of Chelsea. Last season, he was with Bayer Leverkusen, and he has made that big-time transfer to Chelsea. This kid is incredible. and he's still got a lot more room to grow. I mean, he's only like 20, 21. But, he had 16 goals and 8 assists for Bayer Leverkusen in all competitions. And the big thing that I got out of him was that he elevated his game when it mattered most in the Europa League. I mean, they still didn't win it. I mean, they didn't have enough quality to beat those top sides that they started facing off against later in the competition. But that is no knock on Kai Havertz. I mean, he showed up for them in a big way. Completed 85% of his 46 passes per game, also had 2 key passes per game, and just under 2 successful dribbles per game. But the big thing that kind of stands out to me for him is that he really works. He has no problem getting down and dirty. I mean, with about a tackle per game, and he leads this list with 1.5 aerials per game. Kai Havertz, just a huge, huge player, and now moving to Chelsea, I mean, this is a big-time transfer move. He's got a chance to move even higher up on this list if he can show up once again. I mean, if he shows this exact same stat line next year in the Premier League, one of the most competitive league in the entire world, no doubt in my mind, Kai Havertz is going higher on this list. Next, we have Luis Alberto of Lazio. I mean, this man was huge for Lazio last season. Big reason why they were able to have a top 4 finish in Serie A. He had 16 assists to go along with his 6 goals. 2.8 key passes per game, 2 dribbles, and he was no slouch on defense. 1.3 tackles per game. He was giving it all for this first team, and he was easily the biggest creator for Lazio, and not the biggest goal scorer, because of course you had Ciro Immobile there, but honestly, I don't see Immobile having a golden boot type season if you don't have the playmaking chops of Alberto behind him. I mean, what that man was able to do for them was just huge. Creating for himself, creating for others, just doing everything he can to make Lazio one of the best Italian sides in the world. The biggest knock on him and why he doesn't go up any higher on this list was how underwhelming he and Lazio as a side were in the Europa League. Not being able to, proceed past the group stages was just deflating. And, that's why Luis Alberto comes in at number 6. Still a great season, but no better than that. Next, at number 5, I see we're actually going into another tier, folks. Yes, we have reached that part of the segment. At number 5, we have Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United. The stats I'm going to be talking about are strictly for Manchester United, because I know he made that January transfer to Man U from Sporting in Portugal. But with Manchester United in I think it was about 14 matches, in all competitions it was about 22 matches, he had 12 goals and 8 assists. Most of those goals were in the penalty spot, so he's not like a crazy, clinical scorer, although he can shoot from the outside pretty well. There were so many times in the Europa League that he hit the bar, the woodwork, and I was just like, my God, this man can't catch a break. But he did get most of those goals from penalty spots. He's super clinical from there. Honestly, I'm going to go as far as to say that he's probably the best penalty kicker in the world right now. His passing was not crazy. Average 71% pass completion of about 52 passes per game. However, the way he was just able to get his Manchester United teammates in the right positions time and time again was just amazing. And was the main reason why Manchester United were able to, finish 3rd place in the Premier League. And he's going to be huge for them next season. I can easily see him inching up even further on this list. He's only 24 years old. He's got plenty of room to improve. And don't be surprised if you see Bruno Fernandes and Manchester United battling for a Premier League title. I've talked about it plenty of times. So that is exactly why he comes in at number 5. Next, at number 4, we have one of my favorite players on this list. Probably my favorite player if it wasn't for a PSG man that we got coming up next. Or not next, but pretty soon. Papu Gomez, Alejandro Gomez from Atalanta. This man was just unbelievable last year, putting up 8 goals, 18 assists. 18 assists actually lead. No, my bad. Does not even close. but it's second on this list. He completed 79% of his 35 passes per game, had 2.5 key passes per game. He wasn't much of a... And 2.6 key passes per game and 1.8 dribbles per game. He didn't do much on the defensive end, but that wasn't what he was. That wasn't his role. He was the creative hub for Atalanta and was what made them the most exciting team in the world to watch. Of course, they crashed out against PSG, but I mean that's no knock on them. I mean it's really no knock on him, especially because when the way they were playing when he was on the field before getting substituted was amazing. They were super organized and were just giving it to PSG. But literally, as soon as he got subbed in like the 60th minute, you could tell that Atalanta's style of play changed and really made the difference in the game. It allowed PSG to get more looks and get more confident, and eventually led to those 2 goals at the end of the game. Of course, any Atalanta fan that would hear this doesn't want to hear that, but still, Papu Gomez, a top 4 attacking midfielder in the world right now. I mean, I'm super, super proud of that guy. I mean, he didn't really get a lot of, recognition for so many years, and he definitely deserves it now. So, yeah, at number 4, Papu Gomez. Next, we have Thomas Müller coming in at number 3. This man was unbelievable last year, and I would have put him at number 2. Especially after, how important he was to Bayern Munich winning the treble. He had 12 goals, 23 assists, which leads this list. Obviously the assist. But the thing is, it was crazy because I never considered Müller a really great passer. Of course, I'm not, I've only been a soccer fan for 10 years, and I'm not super focused on the Bundesliga. But I always considered Müller as like a go-to scorer. Of course, you got Lewandowski there, so they didn't need him as a primary striker. But that's just how I always saw him. But then, what I love about Müller is the fact that he used that skill of being able to find the right, hole, the right space, and clinically finish into his playmaking. As he found his teammates time and time again. 2.5 key passes per game. Just unbelievable, and he's not much of a flashy player. He only has about 0.5 successful dribbles per game, but he lays it all out on the team for the team. 1.5 tackles, 1 aerial per game. Just a huge season for Thomas Müller, and absolutely deserving of a top 3 spot on this list. But next, we have my favorite player on the list. We have the PSG midfielding talisman, Neymar. Now, I know some of you might think Neymar is an outside player. He's a winger. But no. Ever since Mbappe has been in the squad and then Di Maria has been one of the best winger players for PSG, Neymar has been used as a number 10. As a middle-of-the-field creator. Technically he can go wherever the heck he wants. He is one of the best players in the world, but in just 21 appearances last season, he had 16 goals and 10 assists. That's ridiculous. Think if he had played a full season, this would have been one of his best years ever. And then he's able to pass the ball, as good as any of them. 78% pass completion of about 55 passes per game, 2.5 key passes, and then this is the kicker. This man is the best dribbler in the game. I don't care. I know what you got. You have guys like Adama Traore, who's good, but obviously Messi, who's probably right there, second best. But this man completed 6 dribbles per game. I mean, just making guys look silly out there. And to have that kind of production night in and night out, I mean, Neymar is a beast. Plain and simple, man. Plain and simple. Neymar is a monster. And he absolutely deserves to be number 2 on this list. I would have given him number 1, but the next guy on this list was just consistent all season, and it's just better, plain and simple. Number 1, we have Kevin De Bruyne. If you guys expect anybody else on the top of this list, I don't know what to tell you. Kevin De Bruyne is one of the best players in the entire world. Easily the best attacking midfielder. Honestly, in my opinion, the best midfielder, just plain and simple. The best midfielder in the world. He had 15 goals and 22 assists for Manchester City last season. Completed 80% of his 53 passes per game. Led this list by a mile with 3.9 key passes per game. Just getting his teammates into the right positions time and time again. I mean, his crosses are probably second to Alexander-Arnold, but that's the maybe like a 1B to Alexander-Arnold 1A. But my God, I mean, De Bruyne, I want him on my team. That's no question. I mean, this guy is a beast. He can also create for himself 1.5 dribbles per game, and he lays it out for his team, 1.3 tackles per game. Like, whatever you want from Kevin De Bruyne, he'll give it to you. And that is the most important part. He is a team player. He loves getting his guys successful looks, and he thrives on that. So no doubt in my mind, Kevin De Bruyne comes in at number 1, the best attacking midfielder in the world. So that's going to wrap it up for today's show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I love bringing this content to you guys. And if you guys have any questions, any suggestions for shows up ahead, please let me know. I will be more than happy to, bring that to you guys. So as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.